Hello everyone. Welcome back to the series. In the previous episode, we created our project, organized the folder structure, and configured Retrofit. In this episode, we'll create our home screen, explore the TMDB API documentation, and create our first API request using Retrofit. Let's begin by creating the home screen. Inside the UI home package, I'll create a new Kotlin file called home screen. This screen will become the main page of our application, where users will eventually see trending movies, popular movies, top-rated content, and much more. Right now, we don't have any API connected, so let's just create a simple composable function. Now it's time to connect our application with real movie data. Instead of creating our own backend, we're going to use TMDB APIs. Let's visit the TMDB website. If you haven't created an account yet, simply sign up and generate your API access token. We'll be using the version 4 API throughout this series. Inside the documentation, you can find hundreds of different endpoints. For example, trending movies, popular movies, or top-rated. Now let's switch back to Android Studio. The first thing we need is to change the API base URL. Now let's create our Retrofit interface. Inside the core package, I'll create a new interface called TMDB API. This interface will contain all the API endpoints used throughout the application. Let's start with our first endpoint. We want to fetch trending movies. Inside the documentation, we can see the endpoint. Now that we've created our API interface, the next step is to make it available throughout the application using Hilt dependency injection. Since we've already configured Retrofit in the previous episode, all we need to do is provide an instance of our TMDB API interface. This function tells Hilt how to create an instance of our TMDB API interface. Whenever any class requests TMDB API, Hilt will automatically use Retrofit to generate its implementation. Our API interface is now ready. But there's still one missing piece. We need a data model that matches the response coming from the TMDB API. I'll create a new Kotlin file called MovieResponse inside the model package. Let's go back to the TMDB documentation and look at the response for the trending movies endpoint. Instead of writing all these data classes manually, I'm going to use JSON to Kotlin conversion to save time. Now that our API and response model are ready, let's create a repository. The repository acts as a bridge between our view model and the network layer. Instead of calling the API directly from the view model, we'll keep all network-related logic inside the repository. This makes our code more organized and much easier to maintain. Inside this repository, let's create our first function to fetch trending movies. This function simply calls our API and returns the result. Whenever we make a network request, there are two possible outcomes. The request can be successful. It can fail because of an exception. Instead of handling these cases separately every time, let's create a reusable sealed interface called NetworkResult. Every API request in our application will return these two states. This keeps our code consistent and makes it much easier to update the UI. Now it's time to connect our repository with the UI. Let's create a HomeViewModel. Since we're using Hilt, the repository is automatically injected into the view model. This means we don't have to create any objects manually. Before making our API call, let's create a UI state class. This state will hold the list of trending movies, whether the data is loading, and any error message if something goes wrong. Using a single UI state makes our screen much easier to manage, especially as the application grows. Now that our view model and UI state are ready, it's time to fetch our first set of movies from the TMDB API. Inside the HomeViewModel, let's create a function called loadTrendingMovies. Our view model is now fetching live movie data. The final step is to connect it with our home screen and display the result. Since we're using Hilt, getting the view model is incredibly simple. We just use Hilt view model, and Hilt automatically provides the view model along with all of its dependencies. Next, let's observe the UI state exposed by the view model. Now comes to the interesting part. Based on the current UI state, we'll display different content on the screen. Whenever the API request is in progress, the user will see a loading indicator instead of an empty screen. If something goes wrong while fetching data, we'll simply display the error message. Finally, If everything is successful, we can display our movie data. This isn't our final UI. We're just making sure that the data is successfully reaching our Compose screen. Once we confirm everything is working, we'll replace these text components with beautiful movie cards, posters, and Netflix-style sections. Since we're using Hilt for dependency injection, the first thing we need to do is annotate our activity with @Android entry point. Before Hilt can perform dependency injection throughout our app, we need to initialize it. To do that, let's create a new class called MyApp that extends the application class. The @Hilt Android app annotation is the entry point for Hilt. It tells Hilt to generate all the necessary components required for dependency injection across the entire application. Without this annotation, Hilt won't work, and you'll start seeing dependency injection errors. Finally, don't forget to register this application class inside your Android manifest.xml. Also, we need to give internet permission to access the internet. Let's run the application. Congratulations! Our app launches directly into the home screen. The view model automatically makes the API request, and the data is displayed on the screen. In the next episode, we'll stop displaying plain text and start building a beautiful Netflix-inspired home screen. We'll create modern UI that looks and feels like a real OTT platform. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.